Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey guys, it's Emily, the controversial mom, and I have a burning question for you guys. What makes you a good parent? More importantly, who gets to define what makes you a good parent or a bad parent? As many of you know, I'm very actively engaged in the legislative process here in Alabama, partly because of Moms for Liberty. We have a legislative agenda. We fight really hard for that every single year, but also I'm just a mom trying to do everything I can to possibly protect my child from the craziness that the world has turned into. So I'm very involved legislatively. Also, for anyone that has followed anything that I have said over the past couple of months, anything I have written, you all know that I am very much in the weeds on something called social emotional learning. Not only is it social emotional learning, it's all the things that are built upon SEL. So you've got multi tiered support services, you've got wraparound services, you've got whole child approach, you've got a plethora of things that are all tied back into social emotional learning or SEL. There are so many things out there. So, I've been hyper focused on all of this over the past couple of months. And legislative session in Alabama starts here in a couple of days. So, it's quickly approaching. I have spent a lot of time on phone calls, on email, texting, all the things, talking to various legislators across the state for all the different parental rights related bills that are coming out. And there are a lot. But through all of this, there's kind of been this overarching theme or question that keeps coming up, and that deals with good parenting versus bad parenting. So, let me give you a couple of examples to help you understand exactly what I'm talking about here. So, in Alabama, we're a very red state, very ruby red, very conservative, or so we're told. I would probably challenge that in a lot of conversations, but we are very red state. So red that during the last presidential election, Trump would not even waste his time nor money in Alabama because he knew Alabama was going to deliver for him. He didn't need to come campaign in Alabama because he knew Alabama was a red state that was going to vote for him overwhelmingly. And we did, of course, because we're a conservative community. So we're a very red state. So it shocks a lot of people, myself included, when they learn that Alabama has the lowest age of medical majority or medical age of consent than any other state in the country. I'm going to say that again so it really sinks in. Alabama, ruby red Alabama, has the lowest age of medical consent than any other state in the country. So let me put that in context for you. New Jersey is a blue state. I have friends in New Jersey through Moms for Liberty. Wonderful people, love them. They're true fighters. We were talking this summer about all the craziness, the differences between a blue state and a red state. And my friend complained that in New Jersey, they passed a legislative bill last year that reduced the medical age of majority. And I said, well, what did they drop it to? They dropped it from 18 down to 16. So in New Jersey, their medical age of consent is 16. It's still higher than that in Alabama. This is ridiculous. To further put this in context for you, back in 2021, that's really when you had a lot of this craziness going on with gender reassignment surgeries, gender affirming care. The state of Alabama, at 14, you could consent to surgeries, puberty blockers, cross sex hormones. So if you lived in a state like California or New Jersey and you were 16, you couldn't get any of this medical support. But if you lived in those states and you traveled to Alabama, you could get it. This is ridiculous. Alabama became a safe haven for children that were seeking gender affirming care because at 14 they could consent, where in their states they couldn't. Now, thankfully, our legislators picked up on this. They passed a bill in 2022 that says for any gender affirming care, you have to be 18 to consent. So even though our medical age of consent is really at 14, they kind of carved out this exception, thankfully so. So you can't do that here anymore. We've not become this outlet for the country where people are coming for these very radical medical procedures. So, yay, that piece of it's fixed. But the problem still exists that at 14, girls can get on birth control without parental consent. At 14, kids can get on antidepressants, anti anxiety meds, you name it, they can get it because at 14, they're considered a medical adult and they get to make decisions without the parent. Now, we know this is happening because we have parents reaching out to us and saying, I had no idea. I took my child to the doctor for a checkup, for, routine stuff. And they told me I had to leave the room because they needed to ask my child some questions and I could not be present because my child is now 14. These questions are all around mental health. They're all around, do you feel safe at home? Do you feel suicidal? Do you have suicidal tendencies? And they're doing this without the parent being present in the doctor's office. The parent has to bring them, but the parent can't stay for these conversations. It is absolutely insane. There's also the situation with social emotional learning. So, you all know that I hate social emotional learning. I'm pretty sure that it's a creation of Satan because it's that bad and that dangerous. But it's in our public schools, it's everywhere. And the same thing, who gets to determine if my child needs that or not? It should be me as the parent, right? But if we're not defining what makes somebody a good parent, then by default, the school is getting to determine if I am or not. Because if I don't think my child needs mental health counseling, social emotional learning, then I'm not going to put my child in those classes. But if the school deems that my child is in need and they deem that I'm not a good parent, then they're going to put my child in that class because there's a need for it and I'm not meeting it. I had a really good conversation recently with several friends talking about social emotional learning. And this friend is really very much anti SEL. We're very close. He and I share notes all the time on this. Just an amazing person. But in the discussion, he said to me, some kids need social emotional learning because the parents aren't giving it to them at home. So it only makes sense for teachers to have access to this to apply it in the situation where a kid needs it. But I go back to who gets to determine that? The teacher shouldn't get to determine that. The parent should. Just because a parent may not be what I deem to be great doesn't mean the school gets to fill that void. And that's ultimately the question I'm asking. Who gets to determine if you're a good parent or a bad parent? Because I can assure you the things that I say and I do with my child, somebody out there disagrees with, and vice versa. But that doesn't mean that just because they have a different view of what makes them a good parent or a bad parent, it doesn't make them right or wrong. It doesn't mean I get to determine that for them. Now, I'll judge them all day long because that's just what I do. And I'm sure people judge me, and that's fine because I don't care about people's opinions. But it doesn't mean that they get to make those decisions for me, nor do I get to make it for them. Social emotional learning really pushes the ideology of tolerance and acceptance of all lifestyles. This is a major issue for me. I don't teach tolerance and acceptance. You guys know this. I've said it a million times. I don't teach tolerance and acceptance of all lifestyles. I teach that we follow the Bible and we follow God's ideologies. Sin is sin. It doesn't matter. Homosexuality is a sin. Transgenderism does not exist. Love the person, pray for the person, but that doesn't mean we have to accept their decision to live that way. And we're certainly not going to tolerate it and claim it's fine and dandy and we have to just live and let live, all that love is love stuff. We don't do that. Truth is love, love is God. Plain and simple. So if that's my approach to parenting and the school deems that I am wrong, I am a bad parent, then they're going to put my child into mental health, social emotional learning classes because they've deemed that I'm a bad parent. This is a very dangerous, slippery slope that we're on. We've got a lot of bills coming up this session here in Alabama that are going to hopefully address a lot of this stuff. Trump signing executive orders that will hopefully help with some of this. Just because he signed an executive order does not mean that we're done, we're out of the fight, we don't have to worry about it anymore. If anything, it means we've got to dig deeper into what's going on to enforce these executive orders. So don't think because he signed these things that you're out of this, you're not. But we've got to figure out, our role in determining what is good parenting and who gets to define what that is. And it's certainly not the medical industry, it's not the school system, it's not DHR, it's we, the parents. And it's well past time that we, the parents, get engaged legislatively to ensure that these laws, these bills are being passed into law that protect our rights as parents. I don't care that a 14-year-old wants to get on antidepressants and anti anxiety meds. If the parent is not willing to put them on it, they don't need it. They're not getting it. My 14-year-old could tell me, or my 10-year-old can turn 14 and tell me he wants to get on anti anxiety meds, and I'm going to tell him no. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to walk through all of it with him and tell him the long-term impacts that that would have on him and why it is actually detrimental to his well-being to get on that, because that's my role as a parent. It doesn't make me a bad parent because I'm against putting a 14-year-old on medication. Just like putting your child on it doesn't make you a bad parent. But the parent ultimately gets to decide. And if we're not passing these laws that reassures and reaffirms the role of the parent as the decision maker for these children, then we're really far behind in where we need to be in this fight. So we've got to get involved as parents. You've got to understand where we are in Alabama specifically with these laws and what you have to do to change them, to not only protect your children, but protect your rights as a parent to raise your children, because that's really under attack a lot more than people realize. And it's past time that we step up and we fight back and we retake control of our children's lives. So get engaged, know what's going on. Very important, know what's coming up legislatively and what you can be doing to protect your rights. If you have questions, always let me know. You guys know that I love this stuff. I deal with it all day long. So if you have questions, I'm always here. But get engaged, because we have to protect our kids and we have to protect our parental rights. And we, the parents, will define what is good parenting.